We're back with Bryant Priester, Assistant Director of International Undergraduate Recruitment for Purdue University. And now we're going to really pick Bryant's brain about the evaluation process at Purdue and what they look for when reviewing undergraduate applications for admission. So, Bryant, to begin with, let's talk about the numbers.
Okay.
How many spaces does Purdue have in a first-year class, and how many applications did Purdue receive to fill those spaces?
When I like to talk about spaces, I think it's important to think about, in terms of working with international undergraduate students coming to the United States, it requires a whole level of services in terms of reporting information to the United States government, for cross-cultural programming, and just for general things to make sure that our students are successful in the 4 years that they're at Purdue. Because as I mentioned earlier, students who are ultimately coming to Purdue are there for 4 years. So the university has generally decided that Purdue will probably have between 1,200 to about 1,300 international undergrad full-time degree freshmen every year. And that's based on availability of services to making sure that we offer a robust international orientation for our students, which is over 4 days, and connecting our students with Lafayette, Purdue University, and just everything in general that sort of comes with studying in the United States. To go further, last year we received about 13,000 international undergraduate applications for admission to Purdue. So we have a very large, application pool of, many great students, from around, not only around the world, but also, many international students who are studying in the United States.
So obviously you have a lot of work to do if you're getting, well over 10,000 applications
Right.
for, less than 2,000
Absolutely.
spaces. So now that we know about the requirements, now that we know about the numbers, maybe you can walk us through the evaluation process, for international applicants.
Right.
So beginning with the time that the application is complete until the decision is made, and maybe you can include a little bit about how
Right.
the application is reviewed, or who is reviewing
Absolutely.
the application.
And I was going to say that I don't review all the applications that apply to Purdue. I mean, we work with a whole team of people to review applications. Obviously, it takes multiple people just to open the mail, I mean, the delivery people, who come from around the world, many of us know them on a first-name basis, just based on the volume of mail that we receive. However, Purdue's process, it relies a lot on more and more on technology. And at this point, it's actually, your students are able to apply completely without using any paper. So if you think about the entire, application process that we've done, because right now, everything can be submitted on the Common Applications, the transcript, the recommendation, and the application itself. You can pay the fee online. So there's nothing technically a student would have to mail, to Purdue. I tell students that just because you press submit on Common Application, that does not mean your application will be automatically reviewed the next day. Because imagine several 100,000 people submitting in the same 24-hour time period. So it requires us to go back and make sure that everything that's submitted matches the person's record. Obviously, there are many students with similar names. We've had triplets and quadruplets apply with very similar names, as well as students with even similar birthdays that may be off for a day or two. So we have to make sure that we have, the most accurate record, even though we get many students, who apply, at the same time. Once application is completed, they're submitted to the counselors. So our counselors who review the applications, they actually review by school. So we have a counselor who reviews all of the applications for the College of Engineering, someone from the College School of Education, someone from Management, College of Science, etc. So all of the individual schools. Purdue also have a undecided program for students who want to apply and they haven't selected a major yet. That's our exploratory studies program, and so they can still come to Purdue without choosing a major. So So we're reviewing application based on, I guess, the requirements for a particular program or school at Purdue.
Just to follow up on something that you mentioned, the idea of applying as an undecided major.
Right.
I have a lot of students who will come into my office or they'll email me and ask, is it okay if I apply undecided? There's a lot of students who feel like applying undecided would be a negative in their application. Does applying as an undecided student have an effect on the application from a student?
It has no effect on their application. We prefer students to apply for the majors or programs that they generally are interested in. And if a student does not have it, cannot sort of decide at the time of application, that's what the program is designed for them to do that. And they're still on track to graduate within 4 years in general. I mean, there are special situations, and I don't want to say that has never happened, but it sort of depends on how long the student takes to decide on what they want to study. And the program specific to our program, I'm pretty sure it's endemic to others, students would take special classes or have some sort of interaction with professional staff to help them make that decision. Because not all students, depending on their age, know what they want to do for the rest of their lives, Obviously, I don't know if I want to work in this field for the rest of my life. I enjoy what I do now, but we want students to understand that college is a time of self-discovery. It's a time for education, and having that flexibility, it should not be perceived as a negative. It is. I always tell students the purpose of college is to help you figure out the best way to achieve your educational goals. So if that's what you need, please take that option.
That brings us to the big question. So how does Purdue decide who is accepted and who is denied?
I think the first sort of step is when looking at an application is all of our non-U.S. citizens and permanent residents, they're required to have to demonstrate English proficiency. And for this year, students can choose any means of doing that if they want to take the SAT, the TOEFL, the IELTS, A-levels, etc. They would have to demonstrate English proficiency. So mainly the reason we do that is because we want to make sure that students are able to interact in the classroom while on campus. And at Purdue University, on our main campus, we do not offer English as a second language classes or services. So our students really have to come to campus ready to interact with the students, around them. After that, generally, we do use a holistic sort of view in terms of reviewing things, but at the same time, to be, I guess, a little bit more realistic, students who are interested in the science, engineering, technology, math, even business courses, they would have to have a strong background in math. They have to have a strong background in science. I think that is fair to say. With the overwhelming number of applications that we receive, students who are below average, in science courses or math courses and want to study engineering, that's not a realistic expectation that we will ultimately accept them, even looking at the grand scheme of things with such a competitive and large application pool. And every program is different. We have more flexibility where students may not need a more rigorous study of math, but knowing that a lot of the students who apply, that's their sort of interest, or that's what they select as a major, that's what students need to keep in mind.
According to College Board, Purdue has a 60% acceptance rate overall, so from all applicants. But things might be a little bit different for international students. So can you give us a sense of what it means to have a 60% acceptance rate, specifically as it applies to international students?
Absolutely. So in general, Purdue is a public university in the state of Indiana, and the majority of our students are from Indiana. The way it relates to international students is, having 12, 13,000 international applications each year for freshmen, we sort of have to balance that with just the number of spaces available for international students, just in terms of being able to have campus services specifically for international students, so that everyone can, so that the system is not sort of overburdened with advising with government regulations and programming, etc. So of our 12,000 or so applications, we probably admit about 4,400, 4,500 students per year. In general, why students are really not admitted to Purdue generally has to do with English proficiency. It has to do with students, I guess, their interest major is incongruent with their high school performance. And the last one has to do with timing. Many students, we encourage students to apply as early as possible, especially for more competitive majors. And many students who apply late and the program is closed, we're unable to admit them to their major. So those generally are the big three. In my 5 years of experience at Purdue, why students have not been admissible to our campus.
So, Bryant, how likely is it that an academically qualified student would be denied at Purdue? And if an academically qualified student were denied, why might that be?
I would say that many of it can be for many different situations, but in terms of academically qualifications, Purdue does take generally we take an overview of everything. I mean, we do look at the letters of recommendation, and we do look at the essay. I mean, if a student writes, a completely, obtruse essay, or, there's something that just seems completely divergent from, just the letter grade, that could be a deniability at Purdue. Timing is also an issue as well. And also English proficiency. So we do have very strict English proficiency requirements, and students have to meet our minimums. And I have to have conversations with students who would say, I am 1 point off, or my sub-score is 1 point off. But I mean, when you have such a large competitive pool, that's where we draw the line. And sometimes, we have to put these things into context, not only for students, but also for counselors. And that's why I spent, as I mentioned earlier, many weeks of the year traveling to tell students face-to-face, this is what we're looking for if you're interested in a school such as Purdue University.
Yeah. I think you can probably also add parents to that list.
Absolutely,
as well. So,
absolutely.
Certainly.
And I try to talk to students as early as possible. I mean, traveling, earlier in the application process, we give students the opportunity to retake tests, or if a student, may want to resubmit, certain things, that's okay with us. As part of my job as being a counselor is to counsel students about, being the most successful in the application process at Purdue. And also at the same time, I may have to say, based on what you submitted so far, leaving high school, you may not be admissible at this time. But as you know, we admit transfer students, and also at Purdue we admit graduate students. So there are many avenues for a student to receive a Purdue degree overall. And we talk to these things as well.
Trying to drill down on this a little bit more, how much does Purdue emphasize the fit between the student and the school when evaluating an application?
I really maintain that, many of our students who are applying for, really technical majors such as, engineering and science and such, they've done their homework about Purdue. We're very lucky to have a large alumni base, contacts about making sure that students understand the fit. A part of my job as well is to connect students with alumni in their country. As I mentioned, in all the weeks I traveled, I visited alums in virtually all of the cities that I've been to, and I put students in contact with alums who are very serious so that they can give their own perspective, based on their, them being on campus and now returning to their home country, about what they can sort of expect in the type of classroom. And I sort of see my role, at Purdue, as to help students understand that fit. Some students, who are very lucky, they get this gut feeling and they know that this is the place that they want to be. Other students, they sort of need a a more data management approach, So I help them put in contact with advisors. I give them our plans of study so they would know what classes that they have to take. I get them in touch with, career services so that they know, well, these are the types of companies that will recruit an international student if you're coming to Purdue. So to me, it's about giving them sort of the full circle experience, to help them determine fit, and as I've said before, perhaps, you need more, to some students, maybe you need more of a personalized approach, someone who can, watch you a little bit more, in terms of making sure that, you're doing the things that you do. Because being on a large campus, the expectation is if you need something, you ask us, rather than, someone emailing or contacting you, asking you if you've done this. So trying to put things in perspective to give students that sort of sense of expectation.
So I want to get your take on a popular myth that is, we hear about a lot. The idea that a school will have a quota or a limit to how many students can be accepted or will be accepted from a particular country or from a particular high school. At Purdue, do any such quotas or limits exist?
I think the best way to answer that question, being an admissions professional, if you talk to any professional in the U.S., we're about creating the most diverse academic class that there is. Because being a part of college is being a part of interacting with people from backgrounds, countries, socioeconomic status. So all of these things are factors. And it's really about building a class of people to study, to interact, to graduate with, to help achieve their educational goals. With that being said, we don't specifically pull out all the applications from a particular high school and say that we're only going to do this, because we do review applications in order of completion. At the same time, we want to take the strongest application possible, which would any higher education institution want to do. So that's the way I sort of frame it. There is no set number, but we do want to have diversity within our pool. But that does not come diminishing quality. We will not accept any student, regardless of wherever they come from or whatever background, if we don't feel that they can physically do what is necessary to graduate within 4 years at Purdue. I think that's fair to say.
So looking at the data that is out there about how universities evaluate applications, the data tells us that larger schools like Purdue value the quantitative parts of the application, meaning grades and test scores, more so than the qualitative parts of the application, say essays and letters of recommendation, things of that nature. Is that true at Purdue? And if so, how do you balance the quantitative side and the qualitative side when evaluating an application?
Right. I would say that categorically that is true. We have to do more on the quantitative side of things because most of our students are studying in the sciences, or business. Obviously, it matters more in the application process. But the qualitative side does matter more. It becomes increasingly important closer towards the end of the application cycle. As I mentioned, timing is really important, especially, in early February or so, where there may be a very limited number of spaces left in majors. In order to make those final decisions, that's where the qualitative aspect becomes increasingly important. And that's where we're scrutinizing purpose statements and recommendations and other things in order to see who should we really admit at this point when they applied in the application process. So it does matter, and the way I tell students, do not shortchange yourself if you apply earlier, because that because it could have a bearing depending on many different factors, you know, in the application process.
Great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. All right, we're going to take another quick break, but we'll be back in just a minute to hear more from Bryant.